through 75 counties and hundreds of investigations, from the most violent crimes to petty infractions. This is Arkansas Crime Watch with Kevin Kelly.
We begin with a major development in a 16-month-old cold case. Tonight, one of Arkansas's most wanted fugitives is now in custody. Jory Worthen was added to the U.S. Marshals 15-month wanted list in July, but this past Monday, he was taken into custody by U.S. Marshals in Burbank, California. Good evening and thanks for watching Arkansas Crime Watch on Fox16.com. I'm Kevin Kelly. Authorities say in June of last year he killed Alyssa Cannon and her 4-year-old son Braden Ponder inside their Camden home. Ever since that tragedy, Worthen has been on the run. But last Monday night, the running stopped when authorities tracked him down at a hotel in North Hollywood.
Bloodied and bruised, a heavier set Jory Worthen sits in handcuffs moments after trying to escape U.S. Marshals in Burbank, California. News of his arrest quickly making its way back to Camden police.
Worthen had been hiding under the alias of Ronald Klegler and had been in the Burbank area for about 5 months.
Authorities believe on June 25th of 2019, Worthen murdered 20-year-old Alyssa Cannon and her 4-year-old son Braden Ponder in their Camden home on Ronald Drive. U.S. Marshals believe he left the state in her 2007 Honda Accord, which was later located in Seattle, Washington, 1 month after the murders. But Worthen was nowhere to be found.
We had gotten so many tips throughout the last 16 months. Anywhere from Florida to Georgia, just everywhere.
It wasn't until September 29th, just 8 days ago, that the Western Arkansas Fugitive Task Force received information that Worthen was in Burbank, California. They immediately notified authorities there, who saw Worthen leave a hotel room in North Hollywood. When they confronted him, he climbed on top of the roof and then started jumping from rooftop to rooftop before he was finally arrested. After 16 long months, Worthen is now facing 2 counts of capital murder. But for Camden Police Chief Boyd Woody, the investigation isn't over, at least not yet.
I don't have closure yet. Once I get him back to Camden and he goes in front of the judge and is officially remained over to the Ouachita County Sheriff, then I'll have a little bit of closure.
Worthen will remain in the L.A. County Jail until he signs a waiver that would eventually release him into custody of the Camden Police Department. But he could refuse to sign that waiver. If that happens, a governor's warrant could be issued, which would allow the state of Arkansas to extradite him back to Camden. As for the case itself, Deputy U.S. Marshal Mel Carver was the lead investigator. Earlier this week, I talked to him exclusively via Zoom. It took 16 months. But you finally got your man. Your reaction to his arrest?
Well, it was phenomenal, Kevin. After all this time and all the work and the hours that were put in, it was good to see it come to this part of the investigation come to a good conclusion. I will say that as far as the Marshal Service is concerned, this investigation has been extremely extensive, and for it to end the way it did was satisfying.
I understand that this is an ongoing investigation, even though he is behind bars now, but can you give us some insight? How did this all unfold? Was there a turning point in this investigation?
It was the last week of September. We received some information that was very interesting, but we had to do some significant investigation to develop that information. So once we started putting a couple pieces of the puzzle together, we had an alias, but we couldn't directly tie that to Jory Worthen. And we also had an approximate location, but as we continued on, we figured out that this individual is probably in Burbank, California. So we contacted the Marshal Service Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force, and we explained to them what we had and what we needed, and they took over the investigation from there.
As you well know, there were thousands of tips that came in from all across the nation with possible sightings of Worthen. Florida, Georgia, Washington, even Alaska. Most of those resulted in a dead end, but that all changed last month. When did you know Burbank was actually the real deal?
Probably Monday, October the 5th. That's when we had an idea maybe the end of last week, but come Monday, October 5, we were certain that was going to be it.
And you just mentioned that U.S. Marshals with the Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force were notified about Worthen possibly being in that hotel in Burbank. If you can, walk us through the actual arrest. What happened? Because from what I'm hearing, it sounded like a scene out of a Hollywood movie.
Well, it is LA, Kevin, so it would have to finish that way, right? So we actually got a text. I got a text Monday afternoon, and they had positively identified Joy Worthen. And while we were waiting to hear further, they were, I'm sure, formulating their arrest plan. They decided to attempt to arrest Worthen outside the motel there in Burbank, and then he fled on foot and actually ran up onto the roof of the motel, jumped off of that roof onto a roof of another business, and continued to flee on foot, and eventually jumped down into the backyard of a private residence where he was taken into custody there.
And what was your reaction when you saw the photo of him handcuffed, sitting on the curbside with bloody knees?
Well, I was just glad to see him in handcuffs. Again, extensive investigation from a lot of people, and a lot of hours put in. It was good to see him finally taken into custody safely. Nobody. I mean, he was banged up a little bit, but nobody else was injured, and he was cleared medically to go on to jail. And good conclusion.
Any idea how he was able to survive this long?
That's a good question.
From a financial standpoint as well.
That's a good question. That's part of the investigation that's still ongoing. And we're just now starting to scratch the surface on that. We really don't have any idea yet.
What impact did placing Worthen on the Marshal's 15 most wanted list back in July have on this case?
Well, it gets a lot of significant media attention. And of course, the Marshal Service puts it out on social media, and we got flooded with tips initially, just like we did back when it went on the television show In Pursuit with John Walsh in January of this year. It adds some reward money to it, but it didn't really give us that tip that we needed to break the case.
What toll does a case like this take on you personally, and not just physically, but emotionally as well?
Well, you think about it every day, and you work on it in some aspect every day, and you second guess yourself, and you go back and think, what are we missing? We've had a lot of those conversations, my partners here, and we sit around and we look at the case file and said, okay, what are we missing? What do we need to go back to? What do we need to double check? It's something you think about all the time, and you're always working on it.
Have you personally had a chance to talk to Alyssa Cannon's family about the arrest?
I have not. I know that I called when he was taken into custody. I notified the investigators with the Camden, Arkansas Police Department, and they went and notified her. But we're grateful for the we're grateful for the Cannon and the Ponder family. The arrest is huge for them.
Yeah. Closure in a case like this certainly has different meanings for different people. Camden Police Chief Boyd Woody said earlier this week that he will not have closure until Worthen is back in Camden and handed over to the Washita County Sheriff. In terms of closure for you, where do you stand on this?
I would probably agree with Chief Boyd's comment there, but the wheels of justice, they move slowly. They move slower than we want them to, but they do move. And this is the first step in that process. Obviously, Joy Worthen has a due process in the criminal justice system, but getting him back into Arkansas and starting that process is pretty huge. I don't know if it'll be necessarily closure all the way around until we have an adjudication in court one way or the other.
So is your role in this case over, or is there still more to be done?
We still have a little bit more to do. But our primary purpose in this case was obviously the fugitive part, and we got that completed, but there's still some more work to do.
Deputy Carver, we appreciate your time. Great work to you and your team. The U.S. Marshals always do a phenomenal job. You guys never sleep until until the case you're working on is done. So great job, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you very much.
Reaction to Worthen's arrest quickly made its way back to Alyssa Cannon's mother. Our Claire Kreitz spoke with her and tells us how a Camden Police Department detective followed through on her promise to get Worthen behind bars.
She said, Angela, I'm telling you, I promise you, I will not stop till he's in handcuffs or a body bag. And she kept her promise.
June 25th, 2019. It's a day Angela Cannon will never forget.
It was like my heart was ripped out of me. And I've never gotten it back.
Her 20-year-old daughter, Alyssa, and 4-year-old grandson, Braden, were found dead in their home. The suspect, Joy Worthen, nowhere to be found.
I'm just empty. I'm lost. I feel like I couldn't breathe.
Since then, it's been a 16-month-long search across the country, even in Canada, to find him.
Yeah, you go back and forth to he's never going to be found. I know he's never going to be found, to I've got to have faith and hope. They're going to get him. They're going to get him.
On Monday, that emotional toll Cannon's been experiencing came to an end when a Camden police detective came knocking on her door.
She told me to sit down, and she said, "Give me your hands." And she looked me right in my eyes, and she said, "I got him."
Worthen was caught by U.S. Marshals in Burbank, California.
I mean, I'm glad, and I'm happy, and I'm relieved. It's like a weight off my shoulders, but it doesn't change what he did. They can never come back.
It was a moment she'd waited more than a year for, but Cannon says it also brought up old emotions.
Why? Why didn't you just leave? If you hated my babies that bad, why didn't you just be a man and leave?
A question she may never get the answer to, but for now, Cannon says knowing Worthen is behind bars is bringing some closure.
I do have a little bit of peace knowing he's in jail and that he can't hurt nobody else.
Cannon also wanted it to be known that she appreciates all the hard work that both the Camden Police Department and U.S. Marshals have done over the past 16 months to finally track down Jory Worthen. Turning now to our crime report, the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office arresting a man in connection to the shooting death of a Pine Bluff police officer. Keyshawn Smith is behind bars on a capital murder charge. Authorities say he got into a shootout with police earlier this week and fatally shot Detective Kevin Collins. Another officer also injured in that shooting and sent to the hospital. Smith was already wanted out of Georgia for a murder there. He appeared in court on Wednesday, where the state requested no bond, which was granted. His next court date is set for November 18th. Detective Collins was a 5-year veteran of the Pine Bluff Police Department. He was named Officer of the Year in 2017 for saving a 95-year-old woman from a house fire on Tuesday. A memorial appeared outside the police department. We spoke with friends who described him as a funny and loving man. One woman who went to the University of Arkansas Pine Bluff with him says he took pride in his work.
And for him to be able to accomplish that and do that, it was amazing. But he was just an amazing person and had a heart of gold. He would do anything for anyone, and he was just a great guy.
20-year veteran Lieutenant Ralph Isaac was also shot. He has since been released from the hospital. A third officer, Kelsey Collins, was also on scene but was not hurt. A 19-year-old pleads guilty to first-degree murder in the 2017 shooting death of Newport police officer Patrick Weatherford. Derek Hurd pled guilty last Wednesday to first-degree murder, attempted capital murder, breaking and entering, theft of property, and possession of a handgun. As a result, the judge sentenced him to 24 years in prison on each murder charge and ordered them to run concurrently. He was also sentenced to 18 years for the other charges. Lieutenant Weatherford was shot and killed while investigating a car break-in in June of 2017. State police said Hurd ran away from the officer, then turned back and shot Weatherford. He was hit in the abdomen and later died at the hospital. Weatherford was just 41 years old. A 24-year-old man arrested after police say he punched an off-duty Little Rock police officer unconscious. Police say the off-duty officer was checking on people involved in a traffic accident on October 3rd when he was attacked. On Wednesday, October 7th, U.S. Marshals with the Eastern Fugitive Task Force located this man, 24-year-old Christopher Miller, inside a mobile home just off Colonel Glenn Road. They surrounded the mobile home and Miller surrendered without any problems. He was then turned over to the Little Rock Police Department and is now facing a second-degree battery on a law enforcement officer charge. Police tell us when the off-duty officer started to check on the people in the accident, and after police say he identified himself as an off-duty officer, Miller just knocked him out. The accident happened at the intersection of Stagecoach and Crystal Valley. The officer was not seriously injured. We're told he started regaining consciousness as other officers started showing up. No word yet on when Miller will be in court. Tonight's Mug of the Week goes to Scott Pratchard, who was arrested October 7th and booked into the Faulkner County Jail. The 27-year-old charged with endangering the welfare of a minor, criminal mischief, possession of a controlled substance, and second-degree assault. As we leave you, here's a look at Arkansas's Most Wanted. We want to remind you all of the suspects you've seen tonight are innocent until proven in a court of law. Remember, if you have any information on any of these crimes we talked about, you're asked to call your local police department. Thanks for watching Arkansas Crime Watch. I'm Kevin Kelly. Be smart, be safe, and if you see something, say something. I'll see you tomorrow night on Fox 16 News at 5:30 and 9.